You know, when most of us hear the word Atlantis, we picture this sunken city, maybe full of treasure and ancient secrets. But what if I told you the original story wasn't a treasure map at all? That it was actually a complex philosophical argument? In this explainer, we're going to dig into the real reason one of history's most famous myths was ever told. So, the lost city of Atlantis. It's one of the most famous legends in the entire world, right? It's the ultimate symbol of an advanced civilization swallowed by the sea. But where did it come from? It's not some ancient myth that was passed down around campfires for centuries. The real origin is way more specific and, honestly, pretty surprising. Believe it or not, the first and the only original source for the Atlantis story comes from the great Greek philosopher Plato. He wrote about it in his dialogue, the Timaeus. And it wasn't meant to be some standalone adventure story. It was actually just one part of a much, much bigger philosophical chat. And that whole philosophical discussion, it kicks off with a challenge. See, Plato wasn't just writing into the void. He was actually setting up a story in response to his teacher, the legendary Socrates, who wanted to see his abstract ideas about a perfect society brought to life. So, Socrates had just spent the entire previous day laying out his blueprint for the perfect city-state, a society built from the ground up to be virtuous and unified. But a blueprint is one thing. He then turned to his friends and said, "Okay, now I want you to tell me a story where this ideal city is put to the test in some great conflict." And when you look at Socrates' vision, you can see just how radical it was. He thought that for the ruling class, the guardians, things like private property or even knowing your own kids created divided loyalties. His solution? Get rid of them. The idea was, if you remove greed and nepotism, your leaders will be dedicated only to the good of the state, making it work like one big unified family. Okay, so in response to Socrates' challenge, one of his buddies, a guy named Critias, steps up. And he says, "I've got the perfect story for you." But here's the kicker. He claims it's not fiction. He says it's a true history, passed down in his own family from the famous wise man, Solon. So, as Critias tells it, Solon heard this tale while he was visiting Egypt. An ancient priest there told him that Greek history was actually really short because of all the floods and disasters they'd had. The Egyptian temple records, the priest said, went back way, way further and held stories that the Greeks themselves had totally forgotten. And this long-lost history wasn't about gods and monsters. Nope. It was about two incredibly powerful human civilizations that were basically battling for control of the known world. An ancient, truly virtuous Athens, and a huge, powerful empire from out in the ocean. And this is where we see the main event laid out. The priest describes this ancient Athens as the perfect example of Socrates' ideal state, virtuous, just, and unified. And its rival, Atlantis, is the complete opposite. It's this gigantic empire, incredibly rich and powerful, but it's grown arrogant and corrupt. Driven by its ambition, this massive Atlantean empire launches a totally unprovoked war to enslave everyone in Europe and Asia. At first, Athens leads a whole coalition to defend freedom. But facing the overwhelming power of Atlantis, all of its allies get scared and abandon them, leaving Athens to stand completely on its own. Now, this is the part that almost every modern version of the story forgets. In Plato's original telling, Athens is the hero. Against all odds, this small, virtuous city-state manages to defeat the massive empire. It was a clear victory of moral strength over pure material power. But the story doesn't quite end with a happily ever after. Soon after this incredible victory, a terrifying cataclysm strikes. In just a single, violent day and night, both civilizations are just wiped off the map. The warriors of Athens are swallowed by the earth, and the entire island of Atlantis sinks beneath the waves, gone forever. So why tell this incredible story of a heroic victory only to destroy both sides at the end? Well, for Plato, this whole human drama was just the opening act. Critias tells this story to set the stage for the main speaker of the dialogue, Timaeus, who uses it as a launchpad to talk about the creation of the entire universe. Timaeus starts his speech by describing the universe before creation. He calls it pure chaos, a world with no logic, no order, where everything was just moving around in a totally disorderly and irregular way. A real mess. But out of this chaos, Timaeus argues, a divine craftsman or artificer brought order. Because this creator was inherently good, he wanted to make the world as good as it could possibly be. So he took all that messy chaos and transformed it into a rational, harmonious cosmos. And right there, that's the connection that unlocks the whole thing. The story of the two cities is basically a parable. The orderly, virtuous state of Athens, winning against the chaotic, arrogant empire of Atlantis, is meant to be a human-sized reflection of that divine creator, bringing order to the universe's primordial chaos.
So this brings us all the way back to the big question. Did Plato really want us to grab our maps and shovels and go looking for this place? Or was he trying to teach us something much deeper about who we are and how we build our societies?
For Plato, the story was a vehicle, a really powerful one for his ideas. It was a thought experiment, really, designed to show what an ideal state looks like, the dangers of pride and imperialism, and this epic conflict between order and chaos that plays out everywhere, from the cosmos down to us. So, at the end of the day, the legend that has inspired centuries of exploration was probably never about a real place at all. It was a timeless warning, a philosophical fable to remind us that without virtue and justice, any society, no matter how rich or powerful, risks collapsing under the weight of its own arrogance. And it leaves you with a final thought. What other legends have we completely misunderstood just because we forgot why they were told in the first place?